Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. This week I'm sharing some quick tips to speed up your editing. In freelance work, time is money, and if you charge a per word rate for your editing projects, which is what I recommend, then the faster you can complete a job, the higher your effective hourly rate will be. With the 5 tools I'm sharing today, you'll be able to reduce repetitive tasks, streamline your workflow, and watch your earnings grow. And if you want more information like this and to belong to a supportive community of freelance editors just like you, check out my new monthly membership, Digital Marketing for Academic Editors. Go to acadiaediting.com/marketing to find out more. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Before we get to some of the tools that you can use to edit faster, I want to talk about why it's important to track your editing speed and to understand how you can be more efficient, especially as a copy editor. When you're freelancing, time is money. You're not getting a salary the way you did if you were ever faculty or in another job. You are probably charging your clients a per word rate. So there's a set fee for a project. This helps the client to understand what it is they're going to pay in total, so there's no surprises at the end. And it also actually works in your favor as an editor to charge a per word rate, because as you get more experience and you increase your editing speed, this raises your effective hourly rate. Now, when I'm talking today, I'm focused specifically on editing and email interactions with clients. There are many other things that you do in your daily life as an editor, like marketing or creating invoices or doing other repetitive tasks, scheduling things on your calendar. And there are many ways and tools that you can use to speed up those tasks as well. But today, specifically, we're focused on editing and sending emails. And all of this comes together to determine how many hours you spend working a week. But your effective hourly rate, at least the way I calculate it, is how many hours it takes for you to edit a project and email with the client. And so there you're accounting for the basic time that you spend working on a project and communicating with the client for that specific project. When you record that time and then you compare it to the project fee that you charge, that's how you get your effective hourly rate. When you've been doing this for a while, and I think it took me about 6 months to a year to get to this point, it's possible for you to earn $100 an hour or more. And again, this doesn't include the time you spend marketing or emailing newsletters to your email list or all these other things. This is focused specifically on individual project tasks. But it is very possible for you to make $100 an hour or more. There are even some projects where I've made over $200 an hour. And so this is very important. And I think the tools that I'm sharing with you today are going to be really helpful to get you to increase that speed and also increase your effective hourly rate. So let's go on to the first tool. The first tool won't so much speed up your editing as it will help you track how much time you spend on each project. Now, there are countless options out there that you can use to track your editing and time spent working for each project. Personally, I use the free version of Clockify. It's very easy to create an account, to log in. I'll show you quickly in a moment. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see when I share my screen how you can set up different projects and label them and track your hours. So as I was saying earlier, it is really important to track your time because you want to know how much time you're spending on each type of project. When I was working for editing agencies and book publishers, this was really helpful to me because over several months, I had a record and could calculate what my average hourly rate ended up being for Scribendi and for Charlesworth and for all of these different companies that I worked for. And I could see over time what that hourly rate averaged out to. And I found that for some of the editing agencies that paid me a little bit more, around 3 cents a word, which is pretty high for most editing agencies in my experience, I found that my hourly rate was in fact around $100 an hour, even at that lower rate, that per word rate for projects. But when I was working for book publishers, which it felt like the editing was easier because the text in a book is usually much cleaner than the text in an article you get from an editing agency. With all the additional formatting tasks, I was making only about $40 an hour. And so even though I really loved editing books and reading all these fantastic academic texts, I ended up dropping those companies from my portfolio because it just wasn't worth my time. I could make over twice as much working for these other editing agencies and then, of course, private clients. And so tracking this time and having a record, even just in an Excel workbook, which is what I use, can be really helpful in making those decisions to make sure that you're maximizing your time and earning as much as you possibly can. So let's take a look at Clockify. So here we are in my Clockify account. This is after you create an account. This is what you'll see. There are several options here, starting with the time tracker. This is the main page that I work from. And if you're listening, I'll try to describe as best I can, but you may want to hop on YouTube at some point to see what I'm also showing. You can choose different projects and code your time tracker with different projects like article, book, job market materials, manuscript review, whatever it is that you work on, you can set up those different categories or labels inside Clockify to track the different types of projects. You would also then put in a name, like a client name or the type of, maybe the title of the article that you're editing. Sometimes I also share where they found me, so I know where clients are getting in touch with me. And then you just hit start and track your time. You can also go to the dashboard and see what your breakdown is for each week or month or year, whatever period you want to choose. You can see how much time you're spending each week on different projects and by type of project. So again, articles, books, or whatever you're working on. You can look at the calendar. So if you're more of a visual person and you want to see the breakdown in a calendar display, you can see that. And then they also have a timesheet if you want to enter manually the times. Maybe you forget to track your time in Clockify, you can enter it by hand in the timesheet. Finally, they also have a section called reports where you can pull up more specific information about each type of project or client or all the different labels that you're using to track your time. So again, there are many different options for you. You don't have to use Clockify. This is just an example of the amount of data that you can collect and track. And when I track this, I end up transferring the time for each project into my Excel spreadsheet where I track my earnings and all of that other information. So now that we've looked at how to track our time, let me jump into the first tool that I think you're going to find really helpful. What I use for this task is Microsoft Word's auto text function. And again, there are a lot of other options out there. One that's really popular is called Text Expander. But you have to pay either a subscription fee or you have to buy the software outright. And I've found that Microsoft Word's auto text is right inside Word. It's free. It's just as easy to use. And it's really been helpful for me. So what this does is, when you're editing a document, obviously there are a lot of comments that you leave for clients very frequently, like revised for redundancy, or revised for clarity, or please rework this section, or whatever it is that those comments are, how you phrase them, that you repeat all the time. Instead of having to type those out every time that you need to use them, which is very time consuming and adds up with each project, you can use auto text to save those little snippets, those phrases or sentences that you type all the time, and use usually a 4-character code and the enter key to get that phrase to pop up in your comment or in the main text, wherever you want it to be, instead of having to type it out. So you just memorize the 4-character code that you assign to that phrase or that sentence, and you type it out and hit enter, and then voila, there it is. So let me show you how to set this up in Microsoft Word. And again, if you're listening, you may want to hop over to YouTube when you get a chance and see how this works. So when you open Microsoft Word, let's say that you have a document that you're editing. What you're going to do is type out the sentence that you want to add to auto text, the sentence that you find yourself typing so many times over and over again, like revised for clarity or revised for redundancy. And what I've done on my screen is I've typed out the sentence, "This is a test of auto text." And what you're going to do when you want to use auto text is select the sentence that you want to be coded using that 4-character code that I mentioned. You're going to highlight that whole sentence. You're going to go to the Insert tab in Word. Then you're going to go all the way to the right of the screen and go to Quick Parts. And when you go down to the middle of that menu, you'll see Auto Text. And at the bottom of that window, it will say Save Selection to Auto Text Gallery. And when you click on that, a new menu will open up where you enter your 4-character code and hit OK. And that way, when you go back into Word, I use the code AUTT as a shortcut for auto text. Every time you type AUTT, a little preview window pops up that shows the sentence that is matched to that 4-character code. And it says, press enter to insert. And so you type your 4-character code, you see the preview pop up, and you hit enter. And every time you hit enter, then the sentence itself appears on the screen. And you can do this in the main text, you can do this in a comment, you can do it anywhere in Microsoft Word that you want. And so the only key here is that you have to memorize those 4-character codes. When I started out, I had a little notepad on my desk where I would write down the different codes, but now I use them so often that it's very easy to have it memorized and I know what I need. So that's your quick intro to Word's auto text function. The next tool that we're going to look at, number 3, is called Beef Text. Now, this is a tool that is designed specifically for Windows, but I'm going to look up to find another Mac version and see if I can find a free one, because Beef Text is free for Windows. And if I find a good free version, I will put it in the show notes for this episode. But you can go to beeftext.org, beef like the meat, BEEF text.org, and download this app for free. And what this does is basically the same thing as Microsoft Word's auto text function, except that you can use it anywhere in your computer. And so I use this all the time for emails. And so what you do is you download Beef Text and you type out your email template that you send to clients, say explaining your rates and your editing process and, all that general information that we find ourselves typing out to clients all the time. And you save it as a snippet in Beef Text. So let me show you how that works. So here we are with the Beef Text app open, and you can see that I have quite a few of these snippets saved in the app. I don't really use all of them, but they're there. So for an example, I'm going to use the email that I send to people who ask me for a quote for editing and formatting their dissertation. And so just like in Microsoft Word's auto text, you can create a keyword or a set of characters. With Word, I think it's usually 4 characters, but here it can be longer. And so I've assigned the code CEDIS for copy edit dissertation, CEDIS, as my keyword and my character codes. And anytime I'm in my Gmail account, or again, this can be anywhere on your computer, but anytime I'm in my email, I type CEDIS and hit enter, and it populates the entire email that I send to people who are requesting a quote for a dissertation. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this is multiple paragraphs where I say, thank you for writing. I'd be happy to edit your dissertation, and so on and so forth. And then I can go in, and in the email client, I can edit the text however I want. If I want to change the fee or any details so that the email is relevant to the particular inquiry, I can do that. But this has got to save me hours every week of typing out this information. Or even, I used to, before I discovered Beef Text, I used to keep a draft email in my Gmail account and just copy and paste from that draft. But even that was annoying and time consuming. And so Beef Text is absolutely a lifesaver. Again, I think this is something that you can do with Text Expander, where that works across software on your computer, either Microsoft Word or email or whatever. But these are the free versions that I've found, and they work great for me. So hopefully they'll work for you too. Moving on to our 4th tool to help you speed up your editing. This tool is called Perfect It. You may have heard of this before. There's several options of software out there to help you check your editing and make sure you've not missed anything. Some people use Grammarly, other people use different options. Grammarly has been criticized a bit because they do use AI. Perfect It, as far as I know, does not use AI yet, if that concerns you. But basically what Perfect It does is you do have to pay for it. Is currently right now it's $109 per year for their basic version of the software. You download it to your computer, and it lives inside Microsoft Word. And so when you download it, there will be a tab at the top of your screen called Perfect It. And some people will run this before they start editing to do a check of the document. I run it after I'm done editing. So my workflow is that I will edit the text. I'll run a spell check of the whole file because Perfect It doesn't really do spell check per se. And then I'll run Perfect It. And so what it does is it goes beyond spell check. It checks for all kinds of different things like consistent spelling and capitalization. So if there's a key term that you've capitalized in several places, but maybe there's a few instances where you didn't capitalize it, Perfect It will usually catch that and notify you. And so just like spell check, where it pulls up these examples and shows you the potential problem, you can then choose to change that, to make the change, to make it consistent, or ignore each instance. Maybe there's a reason you didn't capitalize that word in one place, but you capped it in another. It will also check for things like abbreviations or acronyms. And so maybe the author used an acronym like UN for United Nations, and they never actually specified it in the text. Perfect It will pull that up and say, do you want to specify the acronym here? Or maybe you did specify the acronym and say United Nations and in parentheses UN, but later on in the text you wrote out the full term again, United Nations. Perfect It will catch that and ask you if you want to change it to the abbreviation instead of the full term. There are a million other things that it does. If you're curious about this, you can go to their website. It's called intelligentediting.org. And check it out. For $100 a year, it saves me a ton of time. It catches quite a few things that just slip by. You know, we're human, and having software that like this, just like spell check, but something that goes a lot further and checks for many, many more instances of potential errors. It's really helpful, and I think it helps you elevate the quality of your edit before you return the document to the client. The final tool we're looking at today to help you speed up your editing is, of course, macros. I know that that word can inspire fear in many of you, but I'm here to tell you that there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm going to show you a very simple way to get started with macros, because these are going to help you save a ton of time in your editing process. So basically what we're going to do is look at Microsoft Word. I'm going to pull up a document and I'm going to show you how you don't have to use code. You don't have to go into Visual Basic or any of that. You just record the process as you would do it normally on your screen. And this, if you're not familiar with macros, this is just like all the stuff we've been talking about, auto text and beef text. It is assigning a series of keys, these character codes, and telling Microsoft Word that anytime I type these keys, I want you to do this process. And instead of typing the keys and having some series of text pop up, it's typing the keys and doing things like using find and replace, say, to remove double spaces, or changing an N dash to an M dash, or however you want to set it up. Whatever these processes are that you use all the time, you're telling Microsoft Word, here's this character string, this code that I'm going to type in, and every time I do, I want you to execute this process. So let's take a look in Microsoft Word. So for this example, I've typed out a sentence, and I'm going to show you how to record a macro that changes a spaced N dash to an M dash. And so that's a change that we often make as editors, and you can create a macro that will do it for you, so you don't always have to open up, find and replace, and enter the codes and do it by hand every time. So what you're going to do in Microsoft Word is go to the Developer tab. If that is not showing up for you in Word, you may need to go into File and Options and tell Word to show the Developer tab to you. If you're not sure how to do that, a quick Google search will show you how to do it. But open up the Developer tab and then go to Record Macro. And again, this is the easy way to set up macros where you're not having to write any complicated code. We're going to give this macro a name, and it cannot have any spaces in that name. So I'm going to call it NEM dash, NM dash, because that's how I'm going to remind myself that it's an N dash to an M dash. And then I'm going to hit keyboard because I want to assign a keystroke to this macro. The keystroke that I'm going to assign, and you can use whatever you want. Here we're thinking in terms of things like Control X and Control V. So we use those keyboard shortcuts all the time for things like cut and paste. But a macro, the way that we're recording it here, is essentially the same thing. So I'm going to assign a keyboard shortcut that I think is different from anything else. So for example, you wouldn't want to assign Control X because that's what we already use to cut text from a document. So I'm going to type in this box Control 9, 8. And you see that the keys pop up right there, Control 9, 8. And so that's telling Microsoft Word that every time I hit Control 9, 8, I want it to do the process that I'm about to record right now. So after I've entered my keyboard shortcut, I hit Assign, and then I hit Close. And now Microsoft Word is recording whatever I do on my screen. So there you could see there's a little, looks like a cassette tape next to the mouse cursor. So what I'm going to do is hit Control H to open the Find and Replace window. And I'm going to do a simple find and replace for a spaced en dash. Find a spaced en dash. And this code that's on the screen here is for en dash. If you don't know what the codes are, you can open up More and then Special, and you can choose en dash or em dash. And I'm going to replace the spaced en dash with just an em dash. And so here again, I'm going to type the code for the em dash, and I'm going to hit Replace All. And so you see that Word performs that function, find and replace. It replaces the spaced en dashes in my sample text with an em dash, and it says we're all done. We made 2 replacements. And so I hit OK. And then because the macro is still recording, I am going to close out this window, the find and replace window, and then I'm going to hit stop recording up in the Word menus. And so now I have a recorded macro that every time I press Control 9, 8, it performs that function. And again, check it out on YouTube if you're listening, because it's pretty cool to see how it's done. You can do this for any functions that you perform or any processes that you perform over and over again, and it's much easier. But again, write down in your notes what the keystrokes are that you assign to each process, because it can be a little tough to remember. All right. Whew, that was an absolutely information-packed episode. I hope that these 5 tips on tracking your time and speeding up your editing were helpful. I really do think that if you're willing to give them a try and start working them into your processes and your daily workflow, you're going to find them really helpful. I know some of it can be intimidating, but just start with one. Start tracking your time if you're not already. Set up a few of the auto text settings in Word. Give them a try. Check out Perfect It. All of the tools except Perfect It are free, and so it's very low risk. Just give it a try and see if it helps. I think you're going to find it's going to save you a ton of time incorporating these tools into your daily workflow. If you found this information helpful and you want more hacks and more advice and community support from other academic editors just like you, please take a look at my new monthly membership called Digital Marketing for Academic Editors. For just $29 a month, I will send you each month a video and resources, templates, guides, worksheets, screen shared videos like the ones that I've shared with you today in this episode. We have an exclusive Slack channel where everybody is in there every day chatting, asking questions, giving feedback, really fun, supportive environment for people. And we have a monthly Zoom call for an hour each month where we get together and talk and answer questions and share ideas. And it has, so far, we just started this month in January, and so far it has been a lot of fun and really helpful. People are getting a lot out of it. And so think about joining that membership, and you're going to learn so much that's going to really set you up for success this year in 2025, to speed up your editing, to increase your hourly rate, to increase your per word rate, and yet still attract more clients. So Take a look at acadiaediting.com/marketing. This month in January, we've gone over setting up your website and improving your website. Next month in February, we're going to talk about cold email and how that can help you attract a ton of clients. In March, we're going to look at setting up an email list and lead magnets. And it's just totally information packed, tons of info and resources, and especially the community support. So check it out. Thanks again for listening. If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.